Shalom. I wanted to discuss a few words, a few thoughts regarding the subject of prophecy. Our father, the father of the Jewish nation, of course, is Abraham. As we know, Abraham Avinu. And then his son Yitzchak. He is the father of the Jewish people, of the Israeli people. And Yaakov. The three of them were endowed with a great gift, the gift of prophecy. So we are going to discuss to find out why is it, number one, why is it that our forefathers have deserved to have such great gift, the highest level of all gifts, prophecy. We will discuss also about our mothers, our Sarah, Rivka, and even the others. First, we see that the appearance of God in the fact that he spoke to Abraham the first time when he was known as Avram was a commandment. Of course, it does not say that Abraham saw anything, but he heard. Of course, this kind of situation is something that cannot be explained by us normal human beings. But Abraham apparently heard the voice of God telling him, as it says in the Torah in Parashat Lech Lecha, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, and God said to Avram, Lech Lecha, go to yourself to the land that I will show you one day. Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mibolto u'mimolatecha u'mibet avicha. Abandon everything. I mean, he definitely did hear something, because nobody is going to abandon everything upon which he has grown up. I mean, he left his family. Not easy to leave a family, a father, a mother. It's not easy to leave the country that you are used to live in, and next to go to a place that you don't know where, you don't know which land. God said to him, go. First, we have to understand what is it that happened to Abraham. Our sages said that he was of 75 years of age. At that time, he was quite old, but still very strong at that time. So what happened to him that he deserved such a tremendous gift? So we go to the Midrashim, and the Midrashim tell us the story of Abraham, that since the age of 3, he already understood that the way that the people of his country and everywhere in the world cannot be the way that one should follow. They all worship all kinds of gods. And he, with his own intelligence, but also with his will to understand, to bring himself to understand that something is wrong with what's going on, our sages understood that it's possible to say that from the age of 3 he already understood that there is a higher force than what he sees everywhere in the streets. And therefore, during 75 years of his life, he kept on looking and searching for God, until finally he broke out in accordance with what the Midrash tells us, that he screamed, "But where are you, God?" That's when God does not appear to him yet, but he spoke to him. Lech lecha, go out from the land in which you live. And Abraham follows suit immediately, without any discussion, without giving any argument. We shall discuss later what happens to his wife. He had a wife, and Sarah was a beautiful woman, a lady of ladies, someone with whom to contend. So she was quiet. She was not against. Usually the wife would come up and say, "Hey, are you crazy? You want us to live our life the way we are used to, and now at our old age to tell me let's go?" No, she didn't say anything. She listens. Perhaps she has a simple mind. Perhaps she feels inferior to Abraham. Oh no, we are going to find out that later on, that Sarah spoke when you have to speak, and give the order even to the highest person, the greatest person on earth, her husband Abraham. We shall see soon. But now we understand that God is giving the gift of prophecy in the form of a voice, the kind of voice that we cannot explain. But that was in the parasha Lech Lecha, which we read 3 weeks ago. And then the one that came after is Vayera Hashem el Abraham. The story is that Abraham circumcised himself. After his circumcision, on the 3rd day after the circumcision, our sages said this is the day in which the pain is the greatest. That's when God himself appears to Abraham. Why? To visit the sick. It's a mitzvah. That's how we learn from God that everyone is under the obligation to go and visit the sick. So God appears to him. For the first time it says in Hebrew, Vayera Hashem el Avram. And he has shown himself to him. That's a greater level than the previous kind of prophecy. The first prophecy was when he achieved already everything that any human being is capable of achieving in the purity of his deeds and his character. That's why he deserved the gift of prophecy, but in the form of a voice. But now that he did circumcise himself, he achieved the greatest level of purity, and now he is ready to even see the Shekhinah, the divine presence. What did he see? We don't know. Nobody knows. This is spirituality. But he did see, it says, Vayera Hashem el Avram, that God himself came to visit him, and he has shown himself to him. Which, by the way, this teaches us the importance of circumcision, the Brit Milah. Normally, a Jewish child, at the age of 8 days after he comes to this world, has to go through circumcision. Why? Because that's, in a way that cannot be explained easily, circumcision apparently is something which is the basis for the beginning of a life in which there is plenty of understanding that there are commandments to follow. And the only way to follow them is the fact that you have to have circumcision. That's as far as every child, every Jewish child in the world. But Abraham, at the age of 99, that's when he circumcised himself. He did what no other human being can do. The reason why every Jewish child does it, because after circumcision, if he is willing, if he does do the best he can in his life, if he makes the proper effort, he will be able to cope with the obligation of the commandments, the Torah, as well as the purity of character. Without circumcision, it's impossible. Our sages said, we find in the Talmud that in the Talmud Masechet Nedarim on page 31, Rabbeinu HaKadosh says, Gedola Mila, שכל המצוות שעשה אברהם אבינו, great is circumcision. Because we know that despite the fact that all the commandments that Abraham has fulfilled in his life, our sages said that he did fulfill all the commandments of the Torah without learning the Torah as we learn it. But somehow, because of the purity of his character, he was able to fulfill the commandments of the Torah without the knowledge that the scroll of the Torah offers. So, great is circumcision, גדולה מילה, שכל המצוות שעשה אברהם אבינו, despite the fact that Avraham Avinu fulfilled all the mitzvot, all the commandments, with his pure understanding, still he was not able to have the proper prophecy except the feeling of hearing a voice of God, which is great by itself, but at the same time it's not complete. Then comes the parasha later, and it says, Vayera Hashem el Avram. Now God shows his face to him. Of course, in the way that we have explained, that nobody can understand really. But at least we know Vayera Hashem el Avram. He has shown himself to Abraham. When? After the circumcision. Which means the circumcision completed the perfection of purity of Abraham. Now Abraham deserves to have the highest level of prophecy, to be able to see a kind of sight that no other prophets had ever seen except Moses at the mountain of Sinai. What did he see? It cannot be explained in words, in human words. But we have to believe that he saw something that nobody else was able to see. So therefore we know that Abraham has reached the highest level of prophecy. I mean, it's difficult to explain that he saw the face of God as we can understand how we see each other. No, it's impossible, because the Torah does say, Ki lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai. You cannot see the face of God and remain to be alive. And that means that even Abraham, what he saw is something that we cannot describe. Something else, but it is spiritual. After all this, and after Yitzchak, the second father of the Jewish people, the son of Abraham, despite the fact that Sarah, the wife of Abraham, could not conceive for most of her life, by the age of 90 she finally was pregnant, as the angel of God told her, and now she has a son called Yitzchak, and Yitzchak started to grow up, but Ishmael was already born. And what happened? First, when Sarah heard about the news that she is going to be pregnant, she left. In Hebrew, laughing is litzchok, and that's why she called her son Yitzchak. Did we see that Abraham protested? No. He listens to her. He understood that Sarah is also a power, a special force. So he cannot go against. She's right. Fine. But then come the real problem. When Sarah saw that Ishmael is playing, to say it the purest form of playing, with Yitzchak, she didn't like it. Immediately she understood that the influence of Ishmael upon Yitzchak might become greater and greater, and who knows what will happen. She, as she was already known as a prophetess, she understood that this would be destructive for Yitzchak. So she said to Abraham something that no husband can accept. Let's not forget that Sarah herself gave away her slave Hagar to become the wife of Abraham, so that she will, if she becomes pregnant, she will bring a child, and thus Sarah will be built through him. That's what she said. Ve'ebane mimena. Well, in the beginning it worked well, but then she saw that the ways of Ishmael are not very much correct. So she could not tolerate the fact that it might be very, very harmful, spiritually talking, to her son Yitzchak. And she comes up with a very big order to Abraham, ותאמר לאברהם, גרש את האמה הזאת ואת בנה. She said to Abraham, my husband, I want you to chase out this slave woman with her son, because I will not tolerate that her son will inherit one day with my son Yitzchak. What has been explained is that this inheritance is not money talking, it's rather spiritual matters. The proper education that Sarah planned for her son Yitzchak. And then she saw that Ishmael could be a very bad influence for him. Nevertheless, Ishmael is the son of Abraham. Yes, it is true, he is the son also of a slave girl, a Shivcha. But at the same time, he is the blood of Abraham. Not easy for him to fulfill what Sarah is. So what does it say in the Torah? Vayera hadavar me'od le'Avraham. This has been terrible, terrible thing. He does not say in the Torah that he said to Sarah that he got mad at her and he said no. No, he didn't say anything. Just it was felt, God felt that Abraham is extremely contrariated because of what Sarah wants him to do. And God himself comes to Abraham's, and of course in the form that we already understood by prophecy, and he says to him, Yomer le'Avraham, Kol asher tomar lecha Sarah, shma' bekola. We see something extraordinary. Abraham, the giant of all giants, is told by God himself that whatever Sarah is telling him to do, he should obey. Why? Because what she says is higher prophecy than the prophecy of Abraham. She knows. This is unbelievable. I mean, God says to Abraham, please, don't feel bad. אל ירע בעיניך על הנער ועל כל אשר כוזד. Everything that Sarah will ask you to do, listen to her. Why? כי ביצחק יקרא לך זרע. Because by Yitzchak you can call up upon your own destiny, your own descendancy. That's the descendancy of the people of Israel, which comes directly from Yitzchak. And therefore, God says to Abraham, listen to Sarah. Our sages said, this teaches us that Sarah has a greater power of prophecy than even Abraham. Unbelievable. Why? And how can we understand that? Didn't we know that Abraham has reached the paroxysm of prophecy? And then we see suddenly that his wife, the quiet one, even when the angels came, they said to Abraham, where is Sarah? But oh hell, she's in her tent. She doesn't come out. She comes out maybe in some very obligatory matters, that's all. But most of the time, she is very by herself. That used to be the ancient way. So a woman like this should become greater prophet than Abraham. This requires explanation. And therefore, we have to understand that it is a mitzvah to listen to your wife. If you know that your wife has been going throughout her life in the proper way, there is no way not to listen to her in some circumstances. When it comes, for example, I'm talking even the most righteous man and the most learned man in Torah. Nevertheless, in matters of education of the children, for example, or matters that have to do with the house and everything that goes with it, if the wife insists on something, the husband is given the order that he should listen. Why? Because they have more understanding in certain matters. The Talmud says that. The Talmud tells us in Masechet Nida on page 45, we find that based on the verse that is brought in the Parashat Bereshit, in the very beginning of the Torah, when God created the woman for Adam, we're talking about Chava, so he says, Vayiven et hatzela. He used the verb Vayiven. Vayiven comes from the word binyan, which means building, to build. So it says, Vayiven et hatzela. That's how he created Chava, part of the body of Adam. But our sages learn that Vayiven is also providing us with the word Bina, understanding, and sense, intellect. That's called Bina. So the Talmud says in Masechet Nida, as I said before, Melamed shenatan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bina Yetera Ba'isha Yoter Mi Ba'ish. This teaches us, because it says Vayiven et hatzela, it teaches us, this verse teaches us that God gave to the woman more understanding and more senses and more intellect, much more than the man. But we have to understand that. It means the woman understands everything more than the husband. It's very difficult to understand that. We're talking about great people. We are not talking about simple people. Sometimes even simple people, of course, the obligation to listen to your wife when she is a wise woman and a correct one. Why not? But when it comes, as I said, to education of the children, she knows better. That is, of course, provided we are talking about a woman who knows the ways of the Torah. I mean, if she says that I want him to go to learn in places where there is no Torah, there is no Judaism, God forbid that he should listen. Of course not. So the point is this. So we have learned from Sarah that sometimes a husband should also listen to the wife. Why not? And that's what our sages meant when they said that she is a higher prophet than Abraham. In which way? In those things that pertain to the woman. I'll tell you a little story about the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim alav shalom, more than 130 years ago, he was known as a great and very righteous man and very learned man. He gave us plenty in the laws of the Torah, in the Halakha, of course, in Mishnah Brura and everything that he wrote. But he was known more for his humbleness and his greatness and his righteousness. It was Erev Sukkot, the day before Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot. Everybody is building sukkah, so he also is busy to do everything that has to do with the holiday of Sukkot, and number one, to build a sukkah. So he's asking his wife, my wife, where do you think we should do it? I mean, I should build a sukkah. She said to him, I think that this side of the house is good if you could build it on that side. No problem. And he built the sukkah and he spent the whole day building it properly, and he finished. When he finished, he said to her, come to see the sukkah that I have built. She came and she said, oh my God, I thought that this side is good, but I realized that the other side is better. Oh yeah, I wish you had built it in the other side. He didn't utter a word. Immediately, he dismantled everything, he brought down the sukkah, and he built it. He took another day before Sukkot and he built the sukkah all over again. Why? Because, as we said, there are things that women know better, know more. And therefore, a sage knows when to listen to his wife. Every man is endowed with the same possibilities. I'm not saying no. So therefore, we understand. I mean, we are going to find the same thing also in the parasha of this coming Shabbat, Parashat Toldot. We see that Yitzchak also, it took many years until he was able to have a child also. And Rivka also was barren also for a long time. And they were praying, both of them praying, Yitzchak on that side and Rivka on the other side. And finally God listens to them. But it doesn't say to them. It says, Vayatar lo Hashem. That God listens to him, to his prayer. What about her prayer? I mean, she prayed constantly for over 20 years, praying and praying. I'm sure she prayed better than Yitzchak. So how come God listens to the prayer of Yitzchak? Our sages said there is still a difference between Yitzchak and Rivka. Does not mean that Rivka is not a prophet. She is also a prophet. And in some ways, she is greater prophet than Yitzchak. As the stories of this parasha is going to prove. But in the beginning, our sages said that Yitzchak, let's not forget, he is the son of a great tzaddik of Abraham. But Rivka is the daughter of whom? Of Betuel, an idol worshipper. Of course, she has all the merit. But the Shekhinah, the divine presence, it's not that she did not listen to the words, to the prayer of Rivka. Only the prayer came to Yitzchak, was accepted by Yitzchak before it is by Rivka. So apparently this proves that the power of prophecy of Yitzchak is much greater than Rivka. Well, in some cases, yes. Exactly like Abraham and Sarah, as we have explained before. But there are ways, for example, when Yitzchak became very old and he became almost blind, he was not able to see, and now the first son is Esav. He is the firstborn, even though they were of the same womb, Esav and Yaakov. So apparently Esav, he wants the blessing of his father. He's coming to get the blessing, and Yitzchak did not discourage him. He's willing to give him the blessing, and the blessing of Yitzchak is the blessing of all humanity, of forever. It's not for one day. This is a very big and important blessing. Rivka knows that. Now it says that Yitzchak loved Esav, but the Torah offers a reason why he loved him. Why? Couldn't he see that Esav is not behaving correctly? Perhaps he did not Pay attention very much to that. Again, we have a problem of the fact that Esav is the son of Yitzchak, so he loves him. But especially that he saw that his ways are not so good, but he saw in Esav, our sages explain, the commentators explain, that when Yitzchak saw that in the ways, despite the fact that the ways of Esav are not so good, but he had one mitzvah that is great. Here he knew how to respect his father. He knew how to serve his father. There are many stories in the Midrash about how he respected his father, something that nobody can do the same. Extraordinary. So therefore Yitzchak loved him, because this way he said maybe this will help to enhance his ways, that he will finally become better than what he was at that time. But Rivka, it says, Verivka ohevet et Yaakov. Rivka loves Yaakov, not because there is a reason. She already knows that Yaakov is perfect. So she had no fears about the future, the spiritual future of Yaakov. So therefore she wanted very much that the blessing of her husband should go to Yaakov rather than to Esav. She said to Yaakov, go, Esav is not here, go and take make sure that you dress up like Esav, and this way your father will think you are Esav, and this way he gives you the proper blessing. He said, how am I going to do that? He might get angry at me as soon as he discovers that I am not Esav. She said to him, don't worry, listen to me and go. He did listen to her, and he got the blessing of his father. And we know the rest of the story. But in the meantime, what does it say? That Yitzchak loved Esav also, but he did not notice how bad were the ways of Esav. And we know what happened with Esav later on. But Yaakov, Verivka ohevet et Yaakov. There's no reason. Everything is perfect with Yaakov, and therefore she had no fears about him. It gives us a sense that possibly Rivka is a greater prophet than Yitzchak. This I didn't know. That I don't know if it was said by the sages, but we know at least that there is another point, that a mother could be a great prophet. And indeed, because of the bracha of Yitzchak to Yaakov, that's how the Jewish people survives until today. And what we have suffered through the hands of Esav, I don't have to say. It would take a lifetime to tell the history of the Jewish people in the hands of Esav, or if in the hand of Ishmael. We do see that today, how much it is dangerous to live as a Jew with the anti-Semitism in the whole world. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why is it that the Jewish people have to suffer so much? It is possible that because Yaakov took away the blessing that apparently was supposed to be the blessing of Esav. But that's not the case. Our sages said that Yitzchak, the father, was very happy that his blessing went to Yaakov. But at the same time, he felt for Esav. So it's a similar story with Abraham and Sarah vis-a-vis the case of Ishmael. So let us hope that finally we have reached the age in which the suffering of the Jewish people has come to an end. Maybe today, maybe in a very short time, there is going to be the final stage of redemption of the Jewish people by the coming of the Mashiach. Let's hope for the best. Shabbat Shalom.